What do you get when you take a bounty hunting sci-fi adventure story, place it in an overwhelmingly enticing setting reinforced by a great art style, and then slap a soundtrack behind it that sounds like it belongs on a SNES RPG? You get Iria. Stay tuned for more when animebackwhen returns. This story is about the Zeiram Project, a tale about a young female trying to maneuver through a game made for a man alongside her bro. When things take a sudden turn for the worst, it becomes a story of vengeance and a quest for answers, blended with a dire need to decode a conspiracy surrounding a volatile creature involved in the murder of one of her loved ones. But let's slide back a bit. So, before we got this OVA, we got a live-action film called Iria Zeiram that pretty much intended to serve as a prequel to this anime. Issue with this is, the two series contradict themselves on this narrative because the movie is supposed to be more about Iria in her novice stages as a bounty hunter, and her first encounter with the beast that we'll be talking about a little bit later. In the anime, she clearly still is a novice, and the first battle that she has with this beast appears to also still be her first encounter with it. On top of that, there was a point in the middle of the series when her advancement in skill gets acknowledged by higher ups and she's declared a full-fledged hunter. But it is what it is. The story starts off with our protagonist Iria trying to knock down a target, but gets intercepted and mocked by another local bounty hunter, obviously for her gender. Eventually, she tags along for a rescue mission which ends up not going as planned, and that changes the direction of her purpose as a bounty hunter. Iria is a very likable main character despite having some of the same personality traits I would say would cause other characters in various series to be annoying. Very pushy, very demanding, and won't take no for an answer. However, she manages to maintain a certain level of femininity about herself, which makes this feel a bit more realistic. Instead of having some prototypical alpha female running around with guns bounty hunting from planet to planet, your typical cold-hearted one, this character was written almost with the mind frame of, if a real teenage girl was put into this situation, what possible ways would her behavior be? And then this ultimately creates a sense of understanding and empathy towards the things she goes through in this series, cause it's almost like watching an actual person take on the adventure, if that makes sense. The anime is set in a universe where space is treated similar to our very own planet Earth. There is evidence of life on multiple planets across space, with their own unique cultures and lifestyles. And throughout the course of the OVA, you'll see the story cover some ground along a few of these planets. Now, what exactly is the purpose of Iria's plot, you might ask? Without overcomplicating things, this evil monster called Zeiram seems to pop up everywhere Iria goes. And where she's going and why she's headed there is hard to explain because of spoiler territory from episode 1. See, people want this thing, and they want it bad, for the power it harnesses, but people also find that it needs to be destroyed. It requires itself to absorb from organisms in order to retain its life form, and you bet, this causes a lot of people to lose their lives. So for 6 episodes, we get to see a unique choreography of action used to aid towards the elimination of Zeiram. I always admire an anime's ability to be well-rounded. Checks off all the boxes of having all the visual aesthetics and production that we value present, but at the same time also understands to just entertain me through the damn story I'm watching. That's the god honest issue I find as an anime fan sometimes. Majority of the shows you're gonna watch in your lifetime will deliver in terms of art, animation, and music, but if you commit yourself to completing it, a lot of them just feel like you can't wait for it to be over with cause the journey just isn't gripping enough. And this is a situation that Iria takes no part in. It's a fun ride. Everything about it delivers evenly and it all comes together and bounces off each other. The story is great, sending characters on a wild adventure. That connects you to an incredibly out of the ordinary world that they navigate through, which sort of reminds me of like a Dragon Ball Z planet or something like that. Anyway, this is all glued together with great art and animation which only serves to enhance the experience. I myself had the pleasure of rewatching this on a 13-inch CRT TV, which is the one truly intended device that this was meant to be viewed on, and I had a blast. All that spoken, you gotta keep in mind, this is the epitome of a 90s anime, so you may have to hold a certain appreciation for golden era anime to enjoy this. That being said, I do still think people who normally don't watch stuff like this could still get a kick out of watching it. So Rekka, who exactly would you recommend Iria to? Well, my friend, I myself am not a huge fan of sci-fi, meaning I'm just not a sucker for it. Nothing against it, I appreciate it for what it is, and I enjoy how a creator's imagination could bring things to life that we'll never witness in our actual lives through animation form, but I'm not a crazy science fiction nut. Regardless, I really enjoyed this as a science fiction story, and I highly recommend it to those of you that really are crazy about sci-fi, cause this is a pretty solid vintage piece. The world built made me feel a certain type of way through its eeriness. The action is on point, the characters were not the most interesting, but they played their role well enough to execute the story the right way. There's nothing really like this, but if I absolutely had to make a reference to other anime, I might make a comparison of this to Battle Angel. Yeah, I'd say that Iria is like Battle Angel in some ways, but with way more science fiction elements, more futuristic, and of course, set in space. As a matter of fact, there's certainly an alignment between Iria and Alita in terms of them having to be tough and strong in the world they both have chose to operate in, despite one being human and one being a cyborg. In 1995, a video game followed the OVA and dropped in Japan called Hyper Iria for the Super Famicom. It was an action single-player game basically based on the OVA, having Iria take on different jobs. And that's about it. There isn't too much depth to this franchise, and all we got is the OVA, video game, and the movie that kickstarted it all. Some of you might even have questions about this movie. And I knew you would, so I went ahead and I watched it, so you don't have to. And what I walked away from that whole entire whopping 10-minute experience having to say to you about this was, you don't have to. I mean, when you turn on what I thought was supposed to be a classic Japanese film and see this,
alright!
I really don't need to see any more. But that's okay, cause this OVA is all that's necessary to tell the story of Iria the Bounty Hunter. Like the video, comment down below what y'all want to see next. I'm out. Thanks for watching. Animebackwhen.